Imagine a fighter plane so massive, pilots joked you could defend yourself from enemy fighters by running around and hiding inside your own fuselage. A beast so heavy it weighed as much as 2 cars. An aircraft so tough, Luftwaffe ace Heinz Baer said it could absorb an astounding amount of lead and had to be handled very carefully. This is the story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, the 7-ton giant they called the Jug, and how it became one of the most devastating weapons in the American arsenal during World War II. December 1941. America has just entered the war, and the Army Air Forces desperately need a fighter that can dominate the skies over Europe. But there's a problem. Early American designs are getting outclassed by Germany's Messerschmitt 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s. Enter Alexander Kartvili, a Georgian immigrant who fled the Bolsheviks to build aircraft in America. His solution? Go big. Really big. When the XP-47B rolled out, pilots couldn't believe their eyes. This thing was enormous. At 8 tons fully loaded, it was one of the heaviest single-engine fighters ever built. Kartvili himself called it a dinosaur, but a dinosaur with good proportions. The secret to its size? Raw power. At its heart sat the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, a massive 18-cylinder radial engine pumping out 2,000 horsepower. But that wasn't enough for Kartvili. He added an advanced turbo supercharger system with exhaust pipes running along the fuselage that glowed red-hot in flight, spinning the turbine at over 21,000 RPM. This gave the Thunderbolt something revolutionary: dominance at high altitude, where the thin air choked out other fighters. And the firepower? 8 .5 caliber Browning machine guns. That's 3,400 rounds of pure destruction, delivering a combined rate of fire of 100 rounds per second. When all 8 guns opened up, it was like unleashing hell itself. March 10th, 1943. The 4th Fighter Group takes the Thunderbolt into combat for the first time over France. The mission? A complete disaster. Radio malfunctions forced them to turn back. But once those radios got fixed, the P-47 began to prove itself, though without controversy. British pilots, who'd flown nimble Spitfires, looked at their new American mount with horror. One pilot compared it to flying a bathtub around the sky. At low altitudes, the Messerschmitt 109 and Focke-Wulf 190 could outturn and outclimb the early Thunderbolts. Ace Don Blakesley quipped, "It ought to be able to dive. It certainly can't climb." But American pilots learned to fight to the P-47's strengths. They used altitude, speed, and devastating diving attacks. The Thunderbolt had an exceptional roll rate and could outdive anything in the sky. German pilots who tried to dive away learned quickly you can't escape a falling anvil. And when the new paddle blade propellers arrived in 1944, climbing performance skyrocketed. Suddenly, the Jug could do it all. By mid-1943, P-47s were fighting across Europe, Italy, and the Pacific. The 56th Fighter Group, the only 8th Air Force unit to fly the Thunderbolt throughout the entire war, racked up an incredible 677.5 air victories. Aces like Francis Gabreski and Robert S. Johnson became legends in the cockpit of this beast. But here's where the Thunderbolt story gets really interesting. As escort missions pushed deeper into Germany, pilots discovered something incredible. This heavyweight champion could take punishment like nothing else. That massive radial engine? It could absorb direct hits and keep running. The armored cockpit? Pilots came home with flak-shredded fuselages that would have downed any other fighter. The Thunderbolt earned a reputation as the plane that brought you home. So the Air Force started strapping bombs and rockets to it. First 500-pounders, then 1,000-pound bombs, then the devastating M8 rockets. Later models carried the even more powerful 5-inch HVAR rockets. The P-47 transformed into a ground attack monster. From D-Day to VE Day, Typhoon pilots unleashed absolute devastation on German forces. 86,000 railroad cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives obliterated, 6,000 armored vehicles turned to scrap, 68,000 trucks blasted off the roads. On July 29, 1944, during Operation Cobra, the 405th Fighter Group trapped the German column near Ranchi. For over 6 hours, P-47s pounded the trapped enemy. When ground forces arrived, they found 66 destroyed tanks, 204 vehicles, and 11 artillery pieces. 2 P-47 pilots earned the Medal of Honor. Colonel Neil Careby shot down 6 Japanese planes in a single mission over New Guinea. And Lieutenant Raymond Knight sacrificed his life flying his crippled Thunderbolt back to base rather than waste a desperately needed aircraft. The Thunderbolt served with air forces around the world. The RAF flew them in Burma. Brazilian squadrons flew them over Italy. Mexican pilots took them into combat in the Philippines. French, Soviet, and multiple Latin American air forces all put the Jug into action. By war's end, over 15,000 P-47s had been built. Though the sleeker P-51 Mustang eventually replaced it in the long-range escort role, the Thunderbolt ended the war with a 4.6-to-1 kill ratio in over 746,000 combat sorties. Only 3,499 were lost to all causes in combat, a testament to its legendary toughness. The Germans feared it, Allied pilots loved it, and historians remember it as one of the most effective fighter bombers ever built. The P-47 Thunderbolt was never the prettiest fighter. It wasn't the fastest, and it definitely wasn't the lightest. British pilots called it a 7-ton milk bottle. American pilots called it the Jug. Some called it Juggernaut. But when the skies over Europe needed clearing and the roads into Germany needed destroying, there was no aircraft more devastating, no fighter more survivable, and no weapon more feared than the mighty Thunderbolt. It was a dinosaur, just like Kartvili said, but it was a dinosaur that helped win the battle.